And we are live. What is good, everybody? If you're tuning in on the replay, thank you for tuning in. If you're live, thank you for tuning in also. I got Nims with me, I got Felix with me, and most importantly, we have a special guest coming on for today. We have an undefeated welterweight contender, Gor Yeritsyan. So here he is right here. So here he is. So this is Gor Yeritsyan, everybody. He's an Armenian boxer. He's 15-0 with 13 knockouts. First of all, we want to thank you for coming on and spending your time with us today.
Thank you. Hi everyone.
How's it going?
Uh,
Hey man, just real quick, just definitely want to shout you out. Appreciate you coming on, and thank you for your time that you're giving us tonight too.
Thank you too, brother. Thank you too. I'm very happy for this interview. My manager Rachel asked me for this interview, and I'm happy. For me, no problem. I'm ready every time.
Thank you, appreciate that. Go ahead, Jack. I'll let you kick off the interview here.
Perfect. I was gonna say, so we'll all ask a few different questions. We'll kind of bounce around, but the first one I have for you is that it says right now online that your residence is listed as Los Angeles, California. So are you now living there full time, or is that something where you go back home and you only come up for training camps, or are you full time a resident in Los Angeles now?
Yeah, I come first time in LA like 2018, and I come and fight here, and after go home like recovery after come back, and that not good for my career, and like maybe you stay here and fight after this fight, next fight, and you go progressive like forward. And for me, good now live here, live stay here, and training and fight after 2 months, another fight. That's good for me.
Perfect. And then, so Ring Magazine lists you as a six-time Armenian national champion. So clearly, you had a very good amateur background. You were 130, 151 and 30 as an amateur. So, being so successful as an amateur, what was the biggest change that you feel like you had to make to your game once you became professional? Because a lot of guys, once they get stuck in the amateur style like that, when you have so much success, they see they have to make a lot of adjustments into the program. So, what was one thing that you feel like you had to change going from amateur to professional?
Uh, for me, like professional, much better. For me, professional much better. Amateur like 3 rounds, like big gloves. This not good for me. And I fight amateur like 15 years. And I have a two-time bronze medalist, European and World Cup bronze medalist, and national champion, Lara tournament champion medalist. But professional, like high level, I think this much more serious. And I yes, means I feel more comfortable here, like professional boxing.
Perfect. So we spoke on the first question I asked was just about you coming over to the States. So what was the biggest adjustment that you had to make coming over to the States full time? So what was like just the biggest change that you noticed just moving over and having your training camps in the United States now?
Mm, Yeah, Armenian like Armenian boxers, like good boxers, but only amateur. And I spar like every time in Armenia. I have like opponents, sparring partners in Armenia, but this he's like good boxers, but not serious, not professional. And I come first time here in LA, and I go in wild card. My first month, like every day I spar and my chin pain every day. And this not same level. I understand this, and here everything like much serious, more serious, and uh, professional boxing only in USA, I think.
One guy we've interviewed before. He trains also at Wild Card, or used to train at Wild Card. Blair Cobbs. Have you guys ever had any sparring sessions?
Yeah, I spar with him like lot of times.
How are those? Are they pretty good? Solid work.
Yeah, he's a good boxer. He's a good boxer. He helped me. I help him. Like friends. This wild card boxing gym like the same family. It's not opponent, not how You know, like all guys here friends, and I have a 3-4 people with my weight categories, but it's not my opponent, you know. He's my friends, like the same family.
Nice. I just have two more questions, and I'll pass it on to Nibs and Felix. So it's it. I know you just mentioned Blair Cobbs. You have other sparring experience with guys like Callum Walsh, Elvis Rodriguez, and Igas Kavalauskas. So how much confidence does it give you just knowing that you can compete at the highest level, knowing that you have all this experience in sparring that a lot of guys just may not have at this point?
You know, for me, no problem. I spar like world champions, Lara world champions, like good boxers, and for me, I'm ready for everyone. Uh, my sparring partner is much better for in the wild card, and after fight, my opponent's like looking easy for me. Because my sparring partners all undefeated, like all champions, NABO champion, like world champion. This is only good for me, not my opponent.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And just the last one for me, really quick, is that how long has it been since you met Freddie Roach, and how did that partnership kind of form? So how did you guys get to meet, and how has your relationship progressed the more that you guys have been together?
First time I come in wildcard boxing gym, and I said like, can I training here? Like I pay money, and he said like, you're a professional boxer? I say yes, I am 10, or 9, I don't remember. And he said, okay, you train after this. We are talking about this. I say no problem. And I sparred this day, and I looking good today. And after this sparring, I say like, can I pay for training? He asked like, go home and come tomorrow. And I come tomorrow, like Freddie said, you have a trainer? I say no, I'm alone. You won't train with me? I say yes, exactly, I want. And we are starting training camp, like training. After this, I fight with Top Rank Show, 2-3 fights, and after Ring City show one time, and now I work like with 360 promotion.
Awesome. So Nibs or Felix, you guys can feel free to shoot some questions.
Hey, Gord. I mean, obviously, you've been doing so well so far, right? You've proven that you can knock down just about everybody that's come into the ring with you at 15-0 with 13 knockouts. In the welterweight division, which is, the 147-pound division, is there anybody in the division right now that you want to fight right now?
Now I'm maybe one more fight, like not top level, and after this I'm ready for everyone. Really, I'm ready, like maybe title fight, I don't know, like top fights. Because I 2 year I don't fight, and this first fight, my comeback, like I fight 2 rounds, and maybe one more fight, like I go like 8-10, and after this I'm ready, like for everyone. But I want like top level, I'm 15, and I don't like it like go in ring training camp, like very hard training camp 2 months, and after this easy fight, this not good.
You were just in the ring last. I'm sorry, Nibs. You were just in the ring last Friday. How much time did you take off? Because obviously that was a quick fight, just a quick second round knockout. How much time did you take off from the gym, if any?
I come in LA in January, and I start training, and I have like Lara for he asked me like one time Golden Boy, and another time like 360. He asked like date, and after cancel that date, after canceled, and I training like 5 months, and after this fight, and my form like very good, and after this I go fight, like I fight 2 rounds, like 5 month hard training, like sparrings, everything, physical training, and after this like 2 round this my opponent have a good experience. He have 45 fights, but it's not the same level, you know.
Now, did you, with that's such a long training camp, did you, I mean, you felt good in there. Obviously, you got him out of there in 2 rounds. Did you feel you learned anything from that fight?
I learning how many benim artık sesimi basıyor. I learning right after my every fight, you know, this maybe opponent is good, maybe not good, but I learning, you know, like for and means and I look at me after my fight, and I think about my fault, about everything, you know.
Got it. Go ahead, Nibs. You're on mute.
I was just saying, you know, with that being said, what you've learned about yourself in the ring so far, what would you say is your biggest thing you need to fix to start facing the top level guys?
I think nothing now. I think nothing, but because maybe I change. Maybe Freddie asked me. Maybe I want Freddie ask me, but now I don't have a problem, I think.
Awesome. Of the top guys in the division right now, who do you think would give you the most problems in the ring if you guys were on the same playing field?
Now, like after 1 month fight, like for my weight division, Crawford and Spence, this is a great fight. He's both like great fighters, and like like 10 years or 5 years before, I sit in my house and look at TV and say, wow, this guy's perfect. Like I won't fight with him. But now I train here, and maybe I have a chance fight with him. This very good for me. And I want these fights, and I won't fight with Crawford. I won't fight with Spence, Virgil Ortiz, like Lara boxers for my division, like first 50 boxers, like all good boxers, you know. And I want fight like this level, not 300, 200. I want like top 15, you know, 15, 20, 30. These all good fighters, and I train every day, and I'm ready for these fights, you know.
And you mentioned Spence and Crawford. You know, with that fight coming up, do you think you're picking a winner? Do you think you know who's coming out on top on that?
I like Crawford. But I won't win Spence. I don't know. Like I won't win Spence.
That's the good thing is it's such a great fight. It's so hard to pick a winner, and that's I think why it's been a fight that we've all wanted to see. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that we have. We have Mark Nash TV and TJ up in the chat. Salute to you guys for tuning in. I got a few more questions for you. So I saw you mentioned that you're with 316 Promotions. So obviously that is Tom Loeffler. So is that a long-term contract do you have? Are you just with him for a fight or two? I saw that you mentioned that you think he's the right guy to guide you to these fights that you want to get. So is he someone that you envision yourself being with for the long term as a promotion?
Yeah, he's a good person. He's a great man, like good promoter. You know, he promoter like Gennady Golovkin, Triple G, Klitschko brothers, and I believe him. You know, he is a good man, and we are we are discussed like for the long time contract, like 3-5 year, and now like couple days, and I think the contract is gonna be ready, and I signed with him, and we are go forward for a title fight.
I've always been curious too about what other welterweights think, because right now the world titles are all with Spence and Crawford, and then after they fight, they're probably going to have a rematch again, and depending on how that goes, there might even be a third fight. How does it feel knowing that you can work as hard as you want, but it's a world title fight might be years away down the road? How does that feel? Like, is it demotivating? Does it make you want to move a division, or are you just willing to fight whoever until you get that opportunity?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. I live for this, for my boxing career. I live for title fights, championship fights, and this very hard sport, very hard, and you every day go in the ring like sparrings, like fights. You beat him, he's beat you. This not easy because this I have I trust me, and I believe me, and I go for championship fights, and I need this belt, and I need good life and more money, and then I go for this fight, and I'm ready stay ready 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, I don't know, but I gonna be this championship fights.
And any other contenders? I know you mentioned Virgil Ortiz, but there's also Boots Ennis. There's a couple other guys, Stanionis out there. Anybody whose name that you really want to fight?
Yeah, Stanion is my friend. I before this date, he have a date I don't remember, July or no, June, and I spar with him last time for this fight, and after date canceled, and this new date July 8, and Amanda's very good boxer. He's a very strong. He's really strong. He has a good power, and I spar with him, and it's good for me, and I help him for this fight, and I want he's gonna be champion for this fight. He's a great man. I know him amateur boxing. We are going European Championship, World Championship together, and I think he's win this fight. And for me, I can fight with him because we are friends. But Virgil Ortiz, I'm ready for him, no problem. Butaev, I don't know. Jamel James, these are good boxers. Yeah.
That's the good thing about the welterweight division. You mentioned Jamal James, Butaev. There's so many different other guys, Cody Crowley, Rashidi Ellis. There's so many different guys out there, so it'll be good. And with Tom Loeffler behind you, a guy who has all the experience in matchmaking, I think that those are fights that we could definitely see. So another question I had for you is, I know that you're the co-owner of Round Boxing Club. So talk a bit about what the club offers and just what it means to you overall, just to be involved in something like that.
Me and my friend Narek Abgaryan, he's a professional boxer too. He's bantamweight, and 2020, and we are going in Armenia because here the fights is canceled, COVID, and we are going Armenia, and Armenia same, all gyms closed and everything is closed, and we are thinking about gym, maybe we are open gym and train here. And me and Narek opened this gym for me and for him, for training. And after 1 week, these guys call can we training here? Can we training? And we are thinking about maybe this is a business. And and this go now 2 years, 3 years we are working, and gym working business, or Armenian kids come in here, and we are training him for Armenian championships, a lot of tournaments. This is a great gym, and all European people coming training here 12 rounds, and all Armenians know this gym.
Yeah, and it's great to have that also, just because you've talked about how Armenian and a lot of people from your area, they have a lot of amateur success, but I think we're having you guys being professionals. Do you think that that will lead to just the influence and a lot of Armenians who have the amateur success then also following you guys and turning into the pro ranks also?
Yes, yes, of course. All Armenian people knows me like know Narek, and he's know like I'm a professional boxer, undefeated, amateur good boxer, and all people come in my gym like for training with me and with Narek, spar. This good motivation for him, and uh, this gym like motivation all Armenian kids, all Armenian boxers for coming here for training with professional boxers and learning for everything.
Gor, I mean, you're obviously very proud of your Armenian background, right, and where you come from. How important would it be for you to win a championship in the welterweight division and bring it back to Armenia to show people, where you're from, that they can accomplish some of the things that you set out for yourself?
This very good. This very good. Hopefully I win. I say like world championship and I go in Armenia like all Armenian people, all Armenian people. Meet to me, come airport, like meet to me, like photo, like interview, all. In Armenia, we have like two world champions, three, Vic Darchinyan, Raging Bull, you know him, like Arthur Abraham, and here WBC silver champion Vanes Martirosyan, and now Azat Crazy Hovanesian, and like not Lara boxers, professional, and now me and Narek, but maybe 10 people, like maybe world champions, two, three world champions, and all Armenian people like it boxing. He's like it, and he's watch TV every time. Uh, I think for him this maybe I go like world champion. Is all people like it.
Awesome. Well, any other questions you guys have?
I'll just have one more. And first of all, for the chat, thank you for everyone tuning in. If we have any of you guys have any last questions, feel free to drop them in the comments so we can share them. But one more I had is I know that you had a little bit of period of inactivity. A lot of that was due to COVID. I know a lot of fighters dealt with that also. But now being with 360 Promotions, you mentioned with Tom Loeffler, hopefully for the long term, is a big goal of yours just staying active and getting as many fights in possible? And how many fights would you say that you want to have between this year and next year?
For next year, how many fight I want? I think four. I think four, because I want like 10, 12 rounds fights. Maybe eight, like for 8 rounds, five, but 10, 12, like 3, 4.
Perfect. Any of you guys have any other more questions for him?
No.
Yeah, I do actually. With the politics, we talked about this earlier with the politics that are going on in the welterweight division right now. Like we said, it might be years down the line before you even get an opportunity to have a title fight. If an opportunity came about to move up to maybe super welterweight or even middleweight, is that something that you could see yourself doing in the future?
Now for me, good form like welterweight. I go down like pounds, and I go like good shape for 147 pound. After maybe I stay world champion 147. Maybe I try like 154. But now I don't think about this. For me, like for my weight category, this perfect for me 147.
Perfect. Any other last comments that you have for people that are going to be watching this interview, even after tonight?
I want to ask all Armenian people, my friends, all our Armenians, he's coming for support me this fight, and I want to ask him thank you, very thank you, uh, for support, uh, for everything, And I want to thank you. I want to ask thank you my family, my friends, all guys who's of think about me and 360 promotion. Thank you for this good chance me and my team, wildcard boxing team, my coach Freddie, everyone. Thank you everyone for helping me.
Yeah, like you mentioned, you have the support of your whole country. You have the support of 360 Promotions. You have the support of Wildcard, and you now have our full support also. So we want to thank you for this opportunity, and we can't wait to see what all the great things you're going to accomplish in your career.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And of course, thank you my manager. I work with him like 20 days, like 1 month. But she's good. She's nice. And Rachel, she's named Rachel. She's a very very good person, and I like his work. And thank you her like for everything.
Oh yeah, Rachel.
Shout
Me
out
and
to
Rachel. Me and Rachel are good friends. I've known her a long time, and she's awesome. She's one of the best people in the sport of boxing.
Of course.
All right. Well, thank you again. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
See ya.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on. Have a good one.
All right, that's it, guys. If you guys get a chance, hop on YouTube, hop on Daily Motion, and look up some of the clips of his fight. The guy's legit. The power's real, and he's got one of those ferocious come forward type styles. And I'm looking forward to. He's in one of the best divisions right now, and he's going to get matched up with some good talent pretty soon. Maybe later this year, but for sure next year. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm pretty sure, Rachel, if you're still watching, make sure you send us the exclusives as soon as those fights get made.
Yeah, that's the good thing about just the spot he's in the division right now, and then just where he is as a fighter, because we do know that he should be on. As long as he progresses the way we expect him to, and from what he's shown, that we will see him in a major TV opportunity.
Yeah, and Armenia usually produces dogs, bro. Like usually, if you're an Armenian fighter, you coming in there to get work. So, I'm excited to see what he does once he gets those fights he's looking for, right? Like once he gets past the B level guys and starts making some waves, bro.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, and just his style alone, man. It's it kind of reminds me a little bit of the guy that Bivol wants to fight. Why can't I get his name? It's like at the tip of my tongue. The light heavyweight champion, Beterbiev. He's got a style similar to Beterbiev. Very, very. There's a lot of similar traits there. So I think a lot of you guys who might not be familiar with him definitely get familiar early on. I mean, that's what ITR does. We bring you a lot of these hot prospects, before they're even at that level of getting exposure. So, again, appreciate his time too.
Yeah, I like that comparison too, just because he's Oh, you can go, Debs. I can go right after.
No, I was just gonna say I like his humble confidence, right? Like he's humble enough to know where he's at, but he's confident enough to say, "Hey, I can give anybody the business." Yeah. So I like
that. No, I agree with that 100%, and I like the Beterbiev comparison too, just because he is a come forward guy who has you can see he's the kind of guy that can break you down, but he's not. It's not like he's technical too. It's not like he's just kind of throwing these crazy punches or anything. Like he's very methodical with his approach. You can tell him and Freddie have taken a lot of time to kind of get that style down pat. And I do think it's the kind of style that can pay off at the highest level too. Yeah,
and I think Freddie is a good coach for him to have too. Freddie works well with international fighters. He's able to translate, his teachings to them. I can't think of a whole lot of American fighters that Freddie's had success with, but when it comes to fighters from across the sea, like he's had much success with a lot of them. So I think this is going to be a perfect pairing for him.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that he was able to impress Freddie enough to get in there. I mean, you know, everybody wants to work with Freddie at Wildcard. So the fact that he was able to walk in there and Freddie was like, "Yeah, come on, I got you." That's impressive. You know, that lets you know what kind of talent he's really working with.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was just messaging Rachel right now. She says she wants to come on the show one day, and I mean, when you talk about a woman she's been behind the scenes. She's definitely not one that wants the spotlight or anything like that. A lot of people might not be familiar with her, but when it comes to stories, Rachel has so many awesome stories. Like one of these days we're gonna get her on the program. I can't wait because it's gonna be fun. There's a sense of humor. Like you guys are gonna love Rachel. She's awesome.
Yeah, that'll be great too, especially a lot of those people who have been in the sport for so long and don't like being in the limelight. They'll have a lot of stories that people haven't heard before too. So it is always great to kind of show those people out. A lot of people just do interviews every time they have a camera in front of them, which we always appreciate too, because we like getting as much content as possible. But you start to hear stories 2, 3, 4 times. So someone like that who's more exclusive with kind of just what's going on in the boxing world, it'll be really cool to see what you have to say from her perspective.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. Well, what do we got on the agenda tonight, Jack?
Yeah, so we got 2 fights. Well, actually, first I want to touch on quickly. We'll do this just real quick before we talk about the cards for next week. But we had the fight last weekend that we normally predict fights pretty good. This was a fight I did not see going the way it did, so I do want to give the respect and the credit to Teofimo Lopez, because with all the things going on, we talked about just the distractions. They could either just distract him in the ring and it could kind of get ugly, or he could kind of use him as fuel. And that's exactly what he did. He proved that he is one of those guys who might not get up for some fights, but every time he's fighting the top level guys, I think we will see the best of him. And I think part of it could be just that Josh Taylor he's been in some tough fights. He's had injuries, but we knew that going into the fight, and I still picked Josh Taylor. So I have to give all the credit in the world to Teofimo Lopez for a hell of a performance. And frankly, one I did not see coming at all. So I just kind of wanted to start with that without a doubt, because we get picks wrong sometimes, but this was a fight that I did not see him really having much of a chance of winning. And not only did he win, he won a lot wider than the scorecard suggested also.
Yeah, I'm with that. And wasn't surprised that he won still at the end of the day, but just the way he did it, and it was very impressive. And it's a shame that he's stepping away, announcing his retirement. But I do think he's got a lot in his personal life, and this is a way for him to take a break without any pressure from the fans and the media saying, let's get you in here with this guy and this guy next. So it's a good way for him to step away without any distractions and handle what he needs to handle outside of the ring. I believe we'll see him back in the ring in maybe a year or two.
Yeah, I missed that shit by a mile. I mean, but here's the thing, right? We can only make predictions off of what we see, right? And what did we see? We saw Teo struggling in his first couple of fights at the weight, right? We know what Josh Taylor is, right? Well, we knew what he was. But, you take those things into consideration, his layoff, the injury might have bothered him more than he let on. But then, let's face it, Teofimo looked like Teofimo. You know what I mean? His last couple of fights, you can say he really did it. He turned it on. He looked like he was supposed to look. And I don't think it was ever in doubt. Me personally, I feel like he should be mad that the cards were so close. I thought he won all but one round, maybe. I give one round, maybe two, if I'm being nice. I thought it was a complete whitewash. I think he proved himself, capable, more than capable. I still think the top guys in the division give him some problems, but I think even if he runs it back with Josh Taylor, I think he wins that fight again. But like we always say, right? Styles make fights. I think what Teo does, it gave Josh Taylor too many problems he couldn't handle. I'm excited because if Teo does come back, who knows how real this retirement talk is. If he does come back and he looks like that against anybody in the division, it'll be, at the very least, it'll be an entertaining fight.
Yeah, that's the thing with him is he's one of those guys who you want to tune in to watch, because on any given night, especially at the highest level, he could beat or lose to anybody. Those are those things that is always intriguing. I do believe him in the sense that just he's one of those guys who's always worn his heart on his sleeve and he always says what's on his mind. So I do think in the moment he's caught up in just the whole spin that happened from him being on the top of the world after the Lomachenko fight to then being everyone kind of wrote him off after the Kambosos fight and after the first few fights at 140. Then winning against Josh Taylor, having this great performance. He's got to go to court for the custody of battle of his son. So he's got all these things going on. He's got relationship things with other guys in his camp going on. So I do think at this moment he does believe that he might retire. Do I think that's going to last? I do think that probably in a year and a half, something like that, I'm sure he will come back. But I do think in this moment that he does believe this is the decision he's making. I just think that at the end of the day, he's one of those guys who likes being in the spotlight too. And as soon as he sees, let's say, a Devin Haney or these guys move up to 140 and win some belts, I think he'll want to come back and kind of take what was his. But going back to the Josh Taylor thing, it's Taylor looked decent early on in the fight too. Like I had Taylor win in the first and the third round, so he was up 2-1, and it seemed like maybe he was going to be able to kind of do what we thought he was going to do. But in that fourth round, there was a few moments where Tszyu started to, you could see he was getting his confidence, he was getting his swagger back. He started kind of once he started hitting Taylor with big shots, he started kind of high stepping a bit. He started moving around, doing his little dance moves and stuff. And that's one of those things where I think you saw his confidence come all the way back. And I think as long as he's confident and as long as he's doing his thing, I think that he can beat anybody out there for sure.
Yeah, and what you said too, Josh Taylor did have success early on. I almost kind of wonder if he had the same feelings that we did. Not that he was overlooking Tszyu, but I think there's probably a part of him that didn't think he was going to get the best version of Teofimo Lopez, and I think that's why he was, immediately calling for a rematch, because I feel like maybe he'll be better mentally prepared himself, game plan wise, because I think he probably felt like he was going to just, run through Tszyu, which didn't happen. I don't think he expected that himself. I think that was kind of surprising to him. At least body language says that. Yeah,
and I could see whenever the guys lose their titles, he's been a champion for a long time. You do want the rematch, but I think we'd all agree that I think a rematch would probably go, I think, Teofimo's way also. I just think that he's the younger, the more athletic guy. And the big thing that stuck out to me is just his athletic gifts versus Josh Taylor's. He was just on another level. His hand speed, his athleticism, the way he was able to kind of – I talked before about him lunging in, but he wasn't lunging in like he's done before. He was really snapping his shots off, and he was really kind of just – Josh Taylor didn't have an answer. And for all these – another thing I want to give Tszyu credit for is just all these things we were all saying is that, if this fight starts to go Josh Taylor's way, does Teofimo kind of mentally fold or break down? But I think we saw the opposite happen. Once Josh Taylor's the guy who we had said, he's so mentally strong. He's been in all these tough fights. He'll be able to pull it out of the fire. And in those late rounds, he seemed like the one who didn't have a sense of urgency. He kind of seemed like he knew Teofimo had him figured out. So I thought that spoke volumes also, where we were looking at Teofimo's mental state going into the fight. And it ended up being that he had the edge over Taylor in the fight, which I think was telling also, because I don't think any of us saw that coming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah, look, Taylor beat Prograis, so he's not a bump. You know what I'm saying? And by any stretch, I do think he had a bad night at the office. You know what I'm saying? But I will say this: now having seen them fight each other, I think that Tio's style gives Josh Taylor too many problems for him to solve throughout 12 rounds. You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying that the next fight won't be even better, but I think if they fight again, I still think Tszyu can win. Maybe not as impressively, but I think he gives just enough problems to the way Josh Taylor operates to pull out a dub. But I would say for guys who hit a little bit harder, like if he fights a Regis, if he fights some of these other guys, it'd be entertaining. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So speaking of Regis, is a perfect kind of segue over to just one of the two main events that we have for tomorrow night. So Regis Prograis, his first fight with Matchroom, his first defense of his WBC title. He's fighting at the Smoothie King Center in his hometown in New Orleans, which I always like when these champions are able to make a defense in their hometown. We all know that comes with added pressure, and some guys do great with that pressure. Some guys kind of fold under that pressure, so it'll be interesting to see how Regis deals with that. He was supposed to fight Liam Paro out of Australia, but Paro ended up having an injury, so now he's fighting Danielito Zorrilla from Puerto Rico. He's 17-1 with 13 knockouts, and a lot of us remember him from 2 fights ago. He fought Honor Barbosa on a top-ranked show, and he lost the decision in that fight, but one thing he showed is he does have power, and that power carries late in the fight because he was able to hurt Barbosa, and he definitely had some moments where it seemed like he might have been able to pull it out late. So what are you guys' thoughts on this fight, just overall as a homecoming for Regis and then against Zorrilla as an opponent?
I think it's a perfect opponent because it's going to give, as a homecoming fight especially, that's a perfect dance partner because he's going to bring that style that's going to let Regis kind of give the fans what they want to see, what they're going to come for. It's going to be action-packed, and Zorrilla is going to present a perfect style for him. It's still a winnable fight for Regis. It's not I don't see it as a 50-50 fight, but it's going to be fun, and there's going to be some parts where he gets tagged a few times too. And again, like you said, that power is real, and we're going to see a slugfest, I think.
I just hope and pray he doesn't overlook him, right? Because we've seen it a million times, especially lately. Guys overlook the guy in the ring thinking, oh, this is just another one of those fights, right? Where it might be
especially
a little
in their hometown.
Right. But I'm going to look good, or it might just be just tough enough to get me a fight, But I hope Regis, he takes this as serious as it can be and puts on a show, bro. I really think the loss to Josh Taylor actually helped him and made him better. You know what I mean? Because I don't think he ever wants to deal with that ever again, taking an L, especially in a close fight. So, if he puts on like he did in his last fight, this is going to be over quick.
Yeah, but Regis has shown me just 2 different comments he made this week, which give me a lot of confidence that he is not sleeping on this guy at all. One thing we've seen with Regis is I think he is a legit, he's a fringe kind of pound for pound level talent, even though he hasn't gotten, I feel like, the overall respect and just the popularity in the mainstream that he deserves. But the one thing is he probably does get hit a little too much flush. He did say in this fight, though, that he wants to show himself more as he knows he has a lot of power, but he wants to show a lot of his boxing skills also. So I thought that was a good comment to make. And anytime anyone in the media was asking him about a Teofimo Lopez or a Devin Haney or Ryan Garcia, he said that the only questions he wanted were about Zorrilla and this fight. So I think those were 2 things that you see sometimes with these guys. If they are sleeping on the guy, they'll spend the whole week talking about other fights or just how they want to go in and just get this guy out of there real quick. And him talking about him wanting to show his boxing skills for his hometown and him saying that he's only focused on this guy, I think show that he's in the right mindset for this fight coming up, because it can be a tricky fight. And I think even with all these things, it still will probably be a harder fight than most people anticipate. They just see him being like a 20-1 favorite. They see Zorrilla lost his last fight. And though I do pick Regis to, without a doubt, win the fight, I think there can be some tricky moments in there for him.
Yeah, and that's 100% true. He is definitely focused on him. It's like Nib said too, sometimes the extra added pressure when you're in your hometown can get to you, and it's always iffy. It always just reminds me of when Corey Spinks had the rematch with Zab Judah. He got blown out in his hometown. And, it happens. A lot of guys, they get to their hometown, and whether it's just their opponent that night or they're just kind of, extra added pressure. But hopefully we don't see that with Regis. And I know he is focused on his opponent, but I hope this fight kind of puts together some other super fights for him, because I think it's time for him to have a big marquee fight against a big name.
Yeah, I think for me, what gives me a lot of confidence in what Regis can do is it's not just his power, it's his shot placement and his speed in which he lands too, right? So you can have all the power in the world, but if you not accurate and you don't got a little snap on there, Regis has all that, right? And he does have a very good boxing IQ. He doesn't get a lot of credit for that because he does get hit a lot, but I think that's just him. I think that's how he likes to fight. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's necessarily a flaw, because he can take it too. You got to know yourself. You got to know that you can take it to have that kind of fighting style. And I think really, if he gets a fight with any of those guys, like a Ryan Garcia, or even if Tszyu comes back, if he can unify belts, I think he's going to be a problem for just about everybody, bro.
I think so too. And for me, I think the dream fight for him would be a unification with the guy who we just saw has a fight announced for later in August, would be Subriel Matias. because I think both guys are guys who are there to be hit at times, but I just think that would mesh for an unbelievable styles clash. I do think that Matias, if Regis fights Matias fight, I think I could see Matias getting it done, but I do think Regis has more tools in his toolbox, so I'd normally always kind of lean that guy in a matchup, but I think that out of all the possible fights, I think that's the best fight, and it would be a unification of maybe the best two guys at 140 also, so that would be a fight I'd love to see.
Yeah, hell yeah, that'd be a banger. And that Matias fight, do we have a date for that one already?
I think it said August 26th. Let me see if I can find it. It's definitely for August, and he's fighting Sergey Limpinets, if nobody has seen it yet, which is another fight that should be stylistically pleasing. Also, Limpinets is a former 140-pound champion, and he beat down Omar Figueroa pretty bad last year in a whitewash fight. So he showed he had some left in the tank too. And yeah, it says August 26th on Showtime at a location to be announced. So that's a fight definitely to look forward to. And another one of these fights, we talked about it yesterday just amongst us, but we have like 10, 11, 12 straight weeks of high-level boxing, and I don't think I've seen this in a long, long time. So it's going to be a fantastic summer in the sport for sure. It's
going to be very exciting. And just real quick, just cheap plug, we're gonna make sure we bring you some of the hottest content of the summer with all these fights coming up. We're going to be as creative and engaging as possible. So just make sure you stay tuned to all of our social platforms, Instagram, Facebook, OnlyFans, especially as well too. We're going to be bringing you the heat this summer for sure. But with what you said about Lipinets, I don't recall if he was already. I think he was in training for another fight on that card. I know he was a late replacement, but I think he was already training. I say that because if he, with having a full camp against Subriel Matias, that's going to be a banger, man. If he's fully prepared and fully in shape and ready, that's going to be a banger. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, because he's one of those guys who's willing to go out on his shield too. He's willing to kind of give it his all. So I think it'll answer some questions, I think, about Matias also, where we saw Matias in his fight against Ponce earlier this year. It's like where Ponce came out fast right away, and it seemed to be almost too much for Matias. Then Matias was able to rally and make him quit in the corner, I think, in between the 5th or 6th round. So a lot of people wanted to see how that fight would have gone a few more rounds. I think Lipinets is the kind of durable guy who will be able to answer those questions. So I think it's a great fight for both guys at this point. And I got to give Lipinets credit too, because he's a guy who's clearly kind of closer to the end of his career than he is the beginning of his career, but he continues to take tough fight after tough fight, and nobody wants to fight Subriel Matias right now. So the fact that he's jumping at that opportunity, I got to give him all the credit in the world, because this is without a doubt not a fight I'm picking him to win, but I got to give him credit for having the balls to take it when a lot of people turned it down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, who wouldn't want to fight this dude after? I mean, that last fight alone, you know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't be lining up to get my ass whooped either. you know what I'm saying? Like, and the thing is again, it's one thing if you can dish it. It's another thing to be able to take it while you're dishing it. You know what I'm saying? And he's proven that he can do that. So, nobody wants that smoke. Nobody wants a dude who can take a punch and put you out with one. So yeah, I mean he's gonna find it hard to get somebody who legit wants to bang with him, bro.
Yeah. Especially, I think, after the Maxim Dadashev fight, which obviously all the respect to him, he ended up passing away after that fight, which is something you never want to see in boxing. But since then, we've seen Matias. He had a tough loss right after that, which we can kind of see why. Just mentally, I don't think he was in the right spot. He came back to stop that guy, and then he has now made 4 straight opponents quit in the corner. So I think that's just one of those things that we speak to, not only of his power, but just the overall fear his opponents have of him. And I don't think Lipinets, even if he's outgunned, I'm not sure if he's going to have that same fear. So I do think it's going to be a hell of a matchup too, because I think he's going to bring everything he has to the table.
Yeah, definitely facts. And, since we're talking about hot fights that are going to be made over the summer, I mean, one fight that I'm really, really looking forward to, off topic, of course, but Boots and Villa, I mean, that one is going to be a banger. I think that of the, non-championship fights, I think that's probably the one that stands out to me the most as the most exciting right now, because that's going to be a banger. I don't see it really. They should just schedule it as a 4-rounder, because I don't see it even going past 4 rounds.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of fight where Boots got a lot of criticism in his last fight for going 12 rounds, even though he won all 12 rounds. I think that will be better for him going forward, because he hasn't gone the rounds, and they now have the film and they can go back to the lab and work on certain things. But Villa, I think, is the perfect guy stylistically for him. I do think Villa is going to come to fight. And I think Boots is going to have to be careful, but I do think at the end of the day, he plays right into his style. I think Boots can carve him up and get him out of there early, which would still be a major statement because we did just see Villa beat Rashidi Ellis, who Boots was probably going to fight.
Yeah, and that's why I'm even more excited about it too, because Villa is going to have the momentum and confidence going into this fight now too.
And he is a bad boy though, man. Like, I wouldn't completely write him off. I'm not, I'm not expecting him to beat Boots, but at the same time, I wasn't expecting him to beat Rashidi either. You know what I'm saying? And halfway through the fight, I was like, oh well, it looks like Rashidi about to pull away, and then he did what he does, warm down and damn near stop him. Look, man, he might be able to do some things with Boots, bro. We don't know yet. We know this dude's metal has been tested. We haven't really seen Boots' metal get tested yet, and I think he's a guy that can actually do that. But yeah, I think Boots will get the dub, but I think it's going to be a little bit harder than maybe people think. This dude is real. He's not he's not one of these fly by nights. Oh, I got in here just because I beat this guy. Like he's earned his stripes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the welterweight division earlier, just where outside of Spencer Crawford, we've been waiting for these other guys to take big fights. So another fight, which is technically a title fight, but it's a secondary title fight, is Vergil Ortiz versus Stanionis, the fight that we had just talked about with Gor in the interview. And that's another fight that stylistically, that fight and the Boots fight are great fights just because stylistically all four guys are kind of similar, where they're all offensive fighters. They're all there to be hit at times. And I think that the winners of those two fights will kind of be the next in line in the welterweight division, but they're two absolute bangers of fights, and I can't wait to see them both. And the Ortiz-Stanionis one is a bit harder for me to predict because I do agree, because we were talking earlier, I think Stanionis is one of the most underrated guys in the sport, and I would not be surprised to see him pull off the upset on Vergil Ortiz also, especially just because we've seen Vergil deal with certain things. He's had rhabdo twice, which is a thing that you have in your kidneys due to kind of overworking yourself, and just that those things are hard to recover from also. So it'll be interesting to see how he deals with a guy like Stanionis, who's a good body puncher too, as Vergil's a good body puncher also. So both those fights should be great fights, and it's good to kind of see some clarity starting to show in the welterweight division.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And it's funny, I was just a couple hours ago, I was just at Chipotle, and the worker, he saw my boxing gloves tattoo, and we just got into a boxing conversation, and we were just going back and forth about how exciting it is to see a lot of these undefeated fighters fighting each other now. And that's what the difference was with like the UFC. You don't see the undefeated fighters because they fight each other. And, with boxing, we're starting to see that now. And I think it's going to really blossom and flourish again. And it's going to be, this 2023 has already been a hot year, but it's only going to get better. And I think 2024, we're going to see high numbers as far as like viewership goes.
And even just what you said there too, I don't think 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, we would run into people that would kind of be talking about boxing the way they are right now, too.
Right.
I think a lot of it just we saw the Tank and Ryan fight, not just that fight, but just we see even a younger audience getting into boxing, too. A lot of the older audiences, too, that used to be into boxing are starting to get more into it, too. So I think it's great to see these people outside of the hardcores talking about the sport, because I think they're talking about it much more than they were definitely when I got into the sport a few years ago. It's changed completely.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I was just talking to an old head was talking to me about Jaime Munguia, and talking about how he's if he wants to get further on in his career, he's not going to be able to afford fights like that. I see Nibs already expressing his thoughts on Jaime. Go ahead and talk to us about what you thought last weekend.
Hot garbage. Look, man, and he was in a tough fight, right? For the first time against a guy on paper he should be walking through. You know what I'm saying? But, depending on how you had a couple of them rounds, that might have been an L for Munguia. And this is supposed to be, the boogeyman. Get out of here. Stop it. This dude's been fighting nobodies. He finally fights somebody and surprise, surprise, has a rough night at the office. You know what I'm saying? This is why you can build up a 41-0 record, when you're not. Like I said this when they were fighting. He fought a guy last year who just got knocked out on the same card by Shane Mosley Jr. Shane Mosley Jr. is not on anyone's level in the top 10, right? And he's knocking out a guy that fought the guy that everybody thinks is the man, and he's not. He needs to start fighting guys in the top 10 that makes sense. Until he starts doing that, garbage.
Yeah, and even just to kind of piggyback off what Nip said, I thought I had at one point, so it could have gone either way. I wasn't surprised McGee got the decision being a golden one, but I did think Derevyanchenko honestly won that fight. Kind of like I thought it was kind of like the Golovkin fight where I thought Derevyanchenko edged it, but I figured that the A-side guy would probably win a close decision. And once again, in boxing, here we are, and that happened. I will give Munguia credit though, because there was talks about it being a 10-round fight. It ended up being a 12-round fight. And if it was a 10-round fight, he would have lost that fight. And if he doesn't get the knockdown in the 12th round, the fight's a draw. So we did get to see a bit what he's made out of. And I do agree that stylistically there are some shortcomings with him, which is why I would rather just see him in with the top guys, because I think he could kind of surprise some people in those fights. And you want to put him in against those big guys in those big fights, because we wouldn't care, win or lose, versus putting him in against guys he should beat and having him slip up and lose one of those fights too. But I do got to give Munguia credit, because he did show a bit of what he's made of, and he showed that in a tough fight, he can kind of bite down and get the job done. But I think obviously there's still more we want to see, and I'll be interested to see where they go next with him. Are they moving him into a real contender spot where he fights one of those top 10 guys we've been asking for? Or is it 2 to 3 more fights of the same we had seen before, just because this fight was so close to being a loss?
Yeah, it should be interesting to see what the next move is. I hope they continue to move forward, and not because he had a close fight that they take another step backward again. That's what I don't want to happen, because I think that fight helped him, and I'm sure he's going to learn from it. And so I hope that if they don't at least move forward, at least stay on that level. Because if they take him back anymore, I think it's going to really turn people off. And I think, especially after that fight, there's going to be a lot of criticism on him after that.
Yeah, and just look at this. We always talk about records. He's 42-0 now. Derevyanchenko is 14-5. And we would say without a doubt that Derevyanchenko's record in boxing has more respect from the fans and from the media and all those things, because he has 5 losses. Yeah, but he lost a split decision to Danny Jacobs. 2 fights against Munguia and Golovkin that I thought he won. He lost to Carlos Adames and he lost to Jamal Charlo. No shame in any of those losses, and that's the kind of thing that we want to see with these guys, where he's also gotten better from all those losses. The guy who we had thought maybe had been a bit past it is still putting in good performances. So those are the things we want to see with Munguia. I don't think we talked about it last week, especially his Mexican fan base or the West Coast fan base. I'm not sure how much they're even concerned with him becoming on a pound-for-pound list or anything like that. I just think they want to see him in exciting fights, and I think that that's something they should be able to deliver for him, because he's the kind of guy that, like Derevyanchenko or like some of these other guys, his stock will go up even if he loses to those guys. Let's say if he fights a David Benavidez, for example, because I see Nancy saying right there that he said he's staying at 168, which I did see that also. And let's see if he fights a David Benavidez, for example. If he's in that fight, if he gets stopped late, but that fight's an absolute war, and he has his moments where he hurts David in that fight, his stock goes through the roof, and it's way higher than it would have been before he had even taken that fight. So I hope for Golden Boy they kind of take this advice, not that they're listening right now, but we want to see him in these big fights, and who knows, he could surprise somebody, because one thing he can do is he did show that he can take a punch, he knows how to survive and bite down, and he's a very good offensive fighter, so I think he could surprise one of these guys if he does get in one of these big fights eventually too.
Bro, we've said this a million times, and I'm going to say it again. Nobody gives a shit what your record is when you're fighting the best guys available, right? If you're fighting the best guys, you're fighting guys in or around the top 10 consistently, nobody gives a shit what your record is, especially if you're in entertaining fights. Now, if you just get knocked out every time you fight one of these guys, yeah, then that's different. But if you're giving respectable, performances against the top guys and the division that you're fighting in, you're going to get grace, bro. Like, Pacquiao has losses. You look at your favorite fighters probably got losses on their record, right? But the different, the Sugar Ray Leonard's, not Floyd Mayweather's, but all those guys lost, but who were they losing to? You know what I mean? They weren't losing to cab drivers or, some guy who got lucky one night, except for Mike Tyson. But, you're losing to guys that are the best in the division. People are going to keep tuning in. It's just the way it is, bro. I mean, look at Rolly. Rolly lost to Tank and got a title fight. Ryan Garcia lost to Tank. You think anybody's not going to give him a big payday after that? No, of course they are. Tio, he loses his unification and gets more fights. Like, keep fighting the best dudes, and people are going to respect that.
And one thing I will touch on too is, so I definitely want to give him a shout out. I want to give him his props and his just due. Is Shane Mosley Jr. has improved a whole hell of a lot from when we first started seeing him. And that's one guy who, obviously, I'm changing topics real quick randomly, but Shane he's improving a lot. I was a huge fan of Shane Mosley Sr., especially at lightweight, one of the greatest lightweights of all time, tied with Roberto Duran. However you guys want to switch him 1 and 2. Shane was the man, and Junior is starting to fall into his own flow, his own rhythm, and find out who he is as a fighter. And as you mentioned, he's had losses, but he's learned from them. He's grown from them. His record, I think, is a bit more deceiving than what the story is of him as a fighter. He's learning, he's growing and getting better. I say that because that's also a potential opponent for Munguia. But I think Edgar Berlanga is probably the low-hanging fruit for a lot of dudes, and I think Munguia moving up, I think that could be a fight that we're going to see eventually too. I have a feeling that one's going to be made. I don't know why that one is, and we mentioned Edgar a lot because I feel like around that division he's right there for the pickings for a lot of guys, but I think him and Munguia are going to be an eventual matchup, but I wouldn't mind seeing Shane Jr. And yeah, Coach Larry Wade definitely has helped him a lot too. And I'm curious to see who's Shane. I mean, maybe Nancy, you might even know the answer to this too. I would love to know who he's been sparring with, preparing, because he's improved a lot, especially over the past couple of years. He's improved a whole hell of a lot.
Yep, I think first of all, just shout out to Coach Larry Wade. He's one of those guys who it seems like everybody he works with just gets bigger, stronger. They have more pop in their punches. We saw that with Rabesi Ramirez as soon as he went with him. He's got to be one of the best, or probably the best strength and conditioning guy in the sport. We've seen he came up with Sean Porter. He now works with tons of guys. You'll see him in corners all over the sport. One of those guys that you see every time you see him with a fighter, that fighter physically improves, they mature. So I think that's a great thing too. So here are some of the guys that she mentioned for sponsor. Fernando Vargas Jr., I had seen that. Abraham, can't remember his last name, and then Brian Mendoza. So especially Brian Mendoza, those are some great guys to be in with. You can see clear that iron sharpens iron, and he's getting that work in the gym. Yeah,
definitely. I like to see that, man. Sooner than later, you'll see Shane Mosley in one of these interviews because I'm a big fan of him, and I would definitely like to pick his brain and get some questions in with him for sure.
Yeah, one thing about him too is just that we talk about just losses don't define you, and he had said he's mentally in such a better spot than he was early on in his career. He has spoken in interviews just that, and like any of us would, he felt the pressure of being Shane Mosley Jr. and what comes with that. A lot of people expecting him to be his dad, and he said those losses kind of humbled him in a sense. He's always been a humble guy, but just realizing who he was, what he had to work on, and he feels a lot more comfortable in his spot in the sport now than he ever did before. And I think that makes him very dangerous because he almost comes off as a guy, not that he has nothing to lose, but I think he now really has something to prove instead of dealing with the pressure of all the expectations. And I think those losses kind of put him in a better spot mentally, and I think he's more dangerous now than ever because of that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he's a perfect example of moving a guy too fast, too quickly. You know what I'm saying? Moving him up too fast, too quick. And I think that they should have taken their time with him. But, you want to capitalize on the name, right? You want to capitalize on who his daddy is and move him quickly. And maybe they thought he was better than what he was because he does have some pop. He's always been able to hurt some guys. But, and I keep harping on this, man. You got to follow the Deontay Wilder game plan, bro. Get these dudes comfortable in the ring long enough to where they can start beating some legitimate dudes. Then you start moving them up a little bit. But, he was getting, some contenders early on and was in some tough fights. Speaking of the contender, I mean, he was on the contender also and put in some good work there. I was actually impressed with what he did on the show. And, you know, I was impressed with him last night. But again, you know, he's not on the level yet, but he's getting there.
Yeah,
but I do think that, like I said, for some guys, you do want to see them kind of slow build, and I agree that it probably would have been his record would look better right now, but I think he's probably, as a fighter, taking some of those losses he has early on. He said he's been able to find out things about himself that had he been strung on a little longer in fights he should have won, maybe he doesn't find out those certain things. So I do think that each fighter is different, so I do think that game plan works for a lot of guys. We've talked about it with different guys on Top Rank before, that they should maybe slow down progression. I do think for someone like him, like those losses did help him on. I think he's a better fighter now because of it too, which you see with guys. Also, we've seen it with Kenny Sims. There's a bunch of different guys we've talked about where they take those losses and they really take those losses, go back to lab and become a better fighter.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I agree 1,000%. Him being babied and, you know, keeping an undefeated record wouldn't have done him anything. The way he is now, when you hear the name Shane Mosley Jr., you don't get the lore of Shane Mosley's son now. You think of an individual fighter, you know, that shares the name, but I don't picture Shane Mosley Sr. anymore. You know what I mean? I don't expect his son to be fighting. I'm looking at a completely different fighter, and, you know, I love it. I love the progress, and I think those losses, perfect example of it helping somebody, you know what I mean? And I'm here for it. I'm a huge fan myself, so I'm here for whatever else he brings to the table next.
I mean, you guys said it, right? Shane Mosley Jr.'s biggest problem early on was he was trying to be Shane Mosley Jr. You know what I mean? So now, you know, he's 20-4, and credit to him for not giving up, because there are a lot of guys who are Shane Mosley Jr.'s that, you know, they take a couple of L's and now the mystique is gone and they throw in the towel, like, well, fuck it, maybe I, you know, because I'm not undefeated, or, you know, I'm not living up to expectations, and they quit. Credit to him for going back to the lab, for putting in the hard work, and, you know, you see him growing. So I will give him credit for that. He, you know, he's definitely proven to me that he's not a quitter. He's going to keep coming, and he is getting better. So you have to take your hat off to somebody who puts in the work.
Yeah, and then my last comment on him is just, we have a fight coming up, not this week, but next weekend, between Edgar Berlanga and Jason Quigley. Jason Quigley is somebody who he fought before on Devin Haney, Jorge Linares undercard, a fight we talked about. Nancy had mentioned in the comments with Coach Larry Wade. That was a fight where I think Mosley, on my card, I think I still had him winning. I thought he won like the first 4 or 5 rounds very cleanly, seemed a whole level above Quigley. Then Quigley was able to Mosley faded a bit, and Quigley was able to kind of rough him up and pull out the decision in the end. But if Berlanga does win that fight, or even if Quigley wins that fight, I could see Mosley fighting the winner of that fight too. And I think that just the way more he's learned from that loss and he's came back being with Coach Larry Wade, I think we'll see a much different fighter. And I think that could be a perfect opportunity for him also, if he doesn't fight Munguia, to get the winner of that fight.
Yeah, I'm with that too. Definitely good statement for sure.
Yeah. So the last fight that we have, did you guys have any other comments on Shane Mosley or?
No, and again, you know, we'll talk about it next week, I'm sure. But the Edgar Berlanga card, we'll break that down next week. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see Shane and Edgar go at it. And again, I always throw Edgar's name out there because he's a very winnable fight, and it's very kind of easy pickings. Not that he's a bum by any means, but I think he's right there for the pickings. And I think that would be a huge come up if Shane Mosley Jr. got that, because I think he's one of those guys that's viewed as vulnerable. We were talking to Vibes Van Sicklen last Monday on the show. You know, he took his first loss, but as we stated, that's probably going to help him not only, you know, learn from it, but also at the same time, what it does on the opposite end is it lets matchmakers and promoters and managers and fighters see somebody who might be vulnerable. Like, okay, this is a fight I want to take. And, you know, Shane is dangerous in that aspect now, because you're looking at a guy who might be easy pickings, but you get in there and it's not what you think. So those deceiving records can help you as a fighter too. And I think that could be a potential opponent for him too. You know, we'll see. And again, Munguia as well. So we'll see what happens next with him. I think he's got a great backing behind him, promotional wise and everything too.
Yeah, and the good thing is that these guys are all on the same timeline because Shane and McGee just fought. Berlanga and Quigley are fighting next weekend, so it's not like they're fighting 3 or 4 months apart. It can definitely be easy fights to make. So, you guys have made the segue is easy for me too. So we'll segue into another son of a famous fighter, and Costa Tszyu's son Tim Tszyu. He's fighting this weekend. Is defending his interim title against Carlos Ocampo. So that's a pretty good main event. I do expect Tim Tszyu to win that fight. Ocampo is the kind of guy whose game he put in a decent outing against Sebastian Fundora, and then obviously we saw what happened to Fundora in his next fight. So for Tim Tszyu, I think this is just the kind of fight where for him to get some rounds in, I expect probably a late stoppage at some point. One interesting thing is that he did have a really bad, which you mentioned it on our show before, that he was bit by a dog at a friend's just cookout or whatever, where he needed 21 stitches in his forearm for it. So shouldn't really affect him in the ring, but anytime you do have a surgical procedure like that right before a fight, it is something to take notice on. But all things considered, I do expect Tim Tszyu to win that fight. And the fight that I'm really interested on this one, because this is on Showtime, it's a 2-fight telecast on Showtime, and the first fight is a super bantamweight title eliminator between Rais Alim and Sam Goodwin from Australia. That to me is my favorite fight of the weekend. I think that Rais Alim is one of the best super bantamweights in the world. I think Sam Goodwin is a pretty good fighter, also 2 undefeated guys, and I think the winner of this fight, they're going to become, I believe, the mandatory for the guy Tapales, who had just beat MJ Akhmadaliev, and I would expect if Rais Alim wins that fight, he could become champion, and then we could see potentially a unification between him and the winner of Fulton in a way. So out of those 2 fights, do you guys have any thoughts on Tim Tszyu coming back against Carlos Ocampo or Rais Alim squaring off against Sam Goodman in a title eliminator?
With Tim Tszyu, I mean, it's definitely commendable. And, obviously bringing Shane Mosley's name back in it, senior, he had a fight against Zab Judah that was scheduled many, many years ago, when they were still at welterweight at that time in their careers. And Zab had a slip and fall through a glass shower door, I guess they said. He had some stitches in his arm. The fight got canceled and called off. So in this case, shout out to Tim Tszyu for getting bitten by a dog. Like, that's pretty vicious. Something I'd never want to happen to me. I'd rather slip and fall and cut my arm on glass than get bit by a dog. And he's still going through with the fight. And so that says a lot. And it kind of makes me think, because there's been fights that were delayed. Look at Oscar Valdez and Navarrete. I mean, that fight was delayed due to an injury, but they wanted it, so they still made it happen. That was a fight that could have still eventually been made with Zab and Mosley, and never was. Kind of makes you think, was it part of an accident? Was it part of a good way to get away from the fight? Who knows? But with Tim Tszyu, you got to give him credit. He's still going through with this fight because he understands the opportunity that's right here in front of him too, and he understands what's at stake and what it can bring in the future too. Because he's right on the cusp of getting a super big fight. He's right there, and we hope he gets that pretty soon.
Yeah, you have to give somebody credit anytime they suffer an injury, no matter what it is, for continuing on the fight, right, as scheduled, especially. Or just a slight delay. I will say this, though. I think if it were a super fight or a mega fight, or if he were fighting somebody on his level or maybe just a notch above, he takes that time, because you want to be as close to perfect as you can against the top level guys. So, I think he weighed the risk and said, okay, I can still do it. You know what I mean? And that's not taking anything away from his opponent. It's just, hey, it is what it is. You're fighting somebody you think you can handle with the injury. I'll say that. I'm a fan of Tszyu, bro. I didn't think he was going to walk through Harrison like he did, and that was a completely one-sided fight in my opinion. So, I think he's proven himself. I think he's got what it takes to be on that next level. I think he's going to do the Tszyu name, proud. His little brother's been winning, as well. I've been caught that. I don't know much about the other fight. I'll be honest with you, Jack. You know what I'm saying? I didn't do my homework on that one. But you know what? I'm pretty sure if Jack says it's going to be an entertaining fight, that means I need to watch it because it's going to be entertaining.
Yeah, and I can't speak too much on the on that fight as well either. Obviously, we know about Rais Alim, but I don't know much about Sam Goodman, so I can't speak on that one.
Yeah, no, he's a guy. He's got solid boxing skills. He only has 1 or 2 names on his resume that I recognize, but he's a confident guy. And last time we saw a slick kind of boxer come in on the B side, it was Liam Wilson against Emmanuel Navarrete also. So I think those guys have shown. We saw Kambosos do it before. We see Jeff Horn do it before. So I think those guys always come to fight, so it should be interesting. I'm picking Aleem to win the fight, but I think it's close to 50-50 on the odds. And I know Nibs mentioned it too, but I want to give Tim Tszyu a lot of credit because he right now with the interim title is the mandatory for Jermell Charlo for the undisputed championship of the world. They had scheduled that fight last summer for January because at first Tim Tszyu had a hand injury, so that's why it was scheduled so far out in advance. Then Jermell Charlo broke his hand, so instead of waiting, Tim Tszyu says, "You know what? Not only am I going to fight, but I'm going to fight the one guy who beat you and Tony Harrison, even though you ended up beating him in the rematch." And then, like Nib said, Harrison had a few moments in the first few rounds with the jab, but Tim was able to close that distance. And once he did, it was a wrap. And he did Harrison more in dirty and more in a one-sided fight than we've ever seen Tony Harrison in. And once again, he could have waited. Charlo has to delay a little more, so I think that fight would be in the September timeframe. And instead of waiting, he's fighting again. And Ocampo isn't a top 5 guy, but he's a guy who's been in since he lost since he was knocked out in the first round by Spence. He's something like 15-1 during that time. He had a semi-competitive fight with Fundora in his last fight. So I just want to give Tim Tszyu credit for staying active, especially when he knows he has everything to lose in this fight because he already is the mandatory and he's still going forward with this fight also.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, he just knows what's at risk and, what's right there on the cusp for him. And he's ready. He's ready to take advantage. Another big fight like this is only going to launch him into having that Charlo fight or, anybody else who's up there. Big name wise.
Yeah, I got to jump off right now, fellas. It's been a pleasure, man.
No problem. Pleasure as always.
Good night.
Peace. And then we'll be wrapping up real quick too, but I just wanted to get your thoughts because I was going to mention it too. But Jermell has been inactive not because of any wrongdoing, just because he has had the hand injury. He kind of he had a little setback, which is why he's not fighting Tim Tszyu next. But you see with hand injuries all the time, especially in a sport like boxing. So what's your read on, if not looking past Ocampo, but we all do expect Tim Tszyu to win. So what's your read on a Tim Tszyu Jermell Charlo fight later this year, especially with Tim Tszyu being active and picking up big wins and Jermell Charlo being sidelined due to his hand injury, and a hand injury for a guy who's a puncher in Jermell Charlo too. So what are your initial reads on that fight later this year? Because I think a lot of people are viewing that fight as much more of a 50-50 fight than they did before.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think it's going to be more of a 50-50 fight now, especially depending on how Tim looks tomorrow night. It's going to be a whole lot more of a 50-50 fight because I do expect them to look great as usual. And with the time off and, the momentum that Tim's going to have, the age is going to be catching up to Charlo a little bit. It's going to be more of a 50-50 fight. I hope that fight, does land, maybe in September or something like that. I think we're, at a good amount of time for that fight to happen, at a good pace, I should say, maybe October. It ought to be a fun one, man. I'd have to see how Tim performs tomorrow night. I would still have Charlo winning because he's very, very skillful. And I think Charlo probably gets underestimated a little bit for how skillful he is and his boxing IQ. He showed me a lot in the Castaño rematch. He's very smart in there. He did the first fight. It was close. Obviously, it was it was a draw. It was a super close fight, and some people even had Castaño winning. I think the rematch, he knew exactly precisely what he did and didn't need to do, and he didn't go overboard. We've seen Floyd in rematches with close fights like Maidana, and he takes the complete opposite end. He'll move around the whole fight. But Charlo didn't do anything like that, anything drastic. He just made minor adjustments and did what he needed to do, and he got the knockout too. It's going to be fun, man. It's going to be a good one. Charlo's very smart in there. We'll see what Tim brings tomorrow night, and I'd like to see if Charlo's going to be in attendance tomorrow night too.
I still do definitely pick Jermell to win the fight. I think he's, like you said, one of the most underrated fighters in the whole sport. I think they all know kind of the power he has, but they don't appreciate the way he's able to set up his shots. Even just his overall boxing ability when he really is sticking that jab, when he's counterpunching, when he's kind of sliding to the side, ducking shots and stuff like that. And for as good as Tim Tszyu is, for all of his strengths, we've seen him do it against a guy like Tony Harrison. I just think a guy like Jermell Charlo, he's still more kind of tailor-made for. You see a comment from Dennis Cooper here that Tim Tszyu was dropped by Terrell Goucher early in fight, and it was, to me, probably more of kind of a flash knockdown. He was, I mean, don't get me wrong, he was caught with a huge shot, but he was able to then go on and win that fight. But it did show that Tszyu is there to be hit. We know that Jermell, I think, I always talk about in a 50-50 fight, whoever has more tools in their toolbox is kind of the guy who I always lean towards. I think that is Jermell, and I think that for as good as Tim Tszyu is and for all of his strengths, I do think it plays into the hands of Jermell. But the great thing in boxing is anything can happen. Let's say we get in there and Jermell's hand hasn't fully healed. Let's say in the second round, he hits Tim Tszyu, he rocks it, but he breaks his hand. We've seen shit like that happen. We saw it happen with Tank Davis and Isaac Cruz. So anything can happen once you get in the ring. I do fully expect that fight to be next. I know the WBO is going to mandate it. They're going to have a timeline for it also. And I just think that Jermell is one of those guys who I have no doubt that he'll take the fight. He's taken all these tough fights, and he's just the definition of what we want to see from a champion in the sport too. So I think that would be a great opportunity for both guys, and just another one of those great fights that we should see this year in boxing.
And the thing about Charlo too is it's not that he, he'll be in New Orleans. Well, hopefully we have some outlet getting some questions in there with him. That'll be fun to see, his thoughts. But with Charlo, I don't want to say he starts off fast, but he starts off and his motor's running. He doesn't have to warm up, and he doesn't start off cold. He's there. He's already there from round one. He's warmed up. His motor is running. And with Tim, I think we've seen him come off to slow starts. I mean, we saw it with Goucher. We saw it with Harrison. It takes him a little bit to adjust and get used to his opponent. Charlo's not going to give him that time to adjust. Charlo's going to be on him from executing his game plan from, the first minute of the round. So if there's any openings early on, I think Charlo's going to expose it right away. If it gets past the 3-4 round mark, we might be getting into a better competitive fight at that point, which kind of reminiscent of, Charlo Castaño. That's kind of the story that happened there. After the first few rounds, we saw Castaño implement his game plan. So it's a very intriguing fight. But again, I'll still rock with Charlo on that one, just based off of, what we know about both fighters.
Yeah, no, I will too. And I just think that that's a fantastic matchup. I think that we will see it. So if anybody has any last comments or questions, feel free to drop them right now, because we are just about done here. But one thing I do want to do really quickly is I saw a thing which I sent to you guys too. I just want to read off to you guys that week by week the fights that we have, because I don't think I've seen a stretch like this in a long, long time, and at least since I've been really covering the sport as a hardcore fan. So this week we have Regis versus Zorrilla in a title fight, Tim Tszyu versus Ocampo in an interim title fight. Next week we have Berlanga versus Jason Quigley, Carlos Adames versus J Rock for an interim title, and we also have Joshua Franco versus Kazuto Ioka, a rematch in Japan, which is also a world title fight. Then the next week, we have Franchon Cruz Cezern versus Savannah Marshall, an undisputed title fight, with Jared Anderson making his homecoming fight. The week after that, we have a Friday, we have Diego Pacheco headlining a show. And then this, which is going to be one of the better days for fights, we have Virgil versus Stanionis and Boots versus Villa in the same night for the welterweight division. Then this is week by week. There's no bye weeks, anything. Next week, we have Alicia Baumgardner versus Linardatu, the only women to beat her, in a rematch for an undisputed title with Richardson Hitchens, Montana Love as the co-main event. We have Frank Martin also on Showtime that week. The week after that, we have Kambosos against Maxie Hughes. We have Keyshawn Davis as the co-main in that fight also. And then we get into probably the best week that we have maybe ever seen in boxing. We have Fulton versus Inoue on a Tuesday with Robeisy Ramirez as the co-main event. We have Sinisa Estrada headlining a Friday ESPN card with Abraham Nova also on the card. And then we have the Spence Crawford card on that Saturday. Then we still have Danny Garcia, Erislandy Lara the week after that. Maybe the best action fight on this schedule between Emmanuel Navarrete and Oscar Valdez after that. And then we still have Beterbiev and Callum Smith after that. And now we can even pencil in Subriel Matias versus Sergey Limpinets after that. So we have literally 11 straight weeks with probably something like 40 titles overall on the line. So if you're a boxing fan, and even if you're just kind of a casual boxing fan, this is the time right now that you want to get into the sport, because week after week, literally until September, we have bangers every single week. And we have some other big fights that I think will be announced really soon.
And let's not forget, we still have, if you like side shows, Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. But on the undercard, Amanda Serrano and Heather Hardy. I mean, that's another standout that gets overlooked. But man, we have this is going to be a hell of a summer, bro. Like, it's, as a fan, you can't help but be excited. I was talking to Ray earlier this year, and he was like, historically, like, the summer, there's not a whole lot of boxing going on. There's kind of a break until September. It picks back up with the Mexican Independence Weekend, and then we close out the year strong. But this year, the summer is really killing it. It's we had the top tier guys, the championship, the undisputed guys, the David Benavidez, the Caleb Plans, the Tank Davises, all these guys earlier in the year. In the summer, we're getting all those mid-card level guys, and those are where all the action-packed fights are, and they're all fighting each other. I didn't even know Richard Hitchinson and Montana Love were going to have a fight. That's exciting to me. And then we're gonna close out the year strong again with those top level guys. We're gonna see, I'm pretty sure, Tyson Fury in there. We're gonna see Usyk, Wilder. We're gonna see all these guys in there. Canelo's gonna be back in there. But right now, the summer with these mid-card level dudes, it's gonna be banger, man. I love it. I'm excited for it, man.
Yeah, and as Nancy said there, don't forget all the club shows in between. We always say support your local boxing. I know for me, I'm gonna be at some club shows, and I even know 2 fighters that we've had on our platforms at different times. I know a good friend of mine, Michael O'Han, is actually going to be fighting Harry Gigliotti, which is a really good 140-pound fight for our area. So I think that's a huge fight, and the winner of that fight will probably be on a TV fight soon coming up. So we'll have stuff on maybe both those guys for ITR coming up. So as Nancy said, and as we always say, support your local boxing for sure. Just said Boxing Insider has a show every month in New York. June 29th, we have Scooby versus Hank Lundy at Sony Hall in Times Square. That's another good one. I even know, just off the top of my head, I think Avery Sparrow and Tevin Farmer are going to be fighting in a club show in Philly. So that's a great Philly versus Philly matchup. I'm sure the atmosphere there will be pretty cool. So these club shows are always really great. If you're a boxing fan, if you have them in your area, just go to them, because I promise you, every time I go to a club show, I always feel like I get my money's worth, and they're just great nights overall. And you get to see the journey of these fighters, and then eventually once they get on TV, it's even cooler to see because you got to see them before they got there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's Hank Lundy's last fight. He's calling it a career after this, if I'm not mistaken. Also next weekend, if you're in an Arizona area, we have another Iron Boy Promotions card headlined by Trevor McCumbee. He's fighting for the WBC Intercontinental Championship. That should be a fun fight. I'll be out there in attendance, of course, supporting Trevor. We'll be doing some filming for an upcoming episode of The Fight Life with Trevor McCumbee. That's going to be out pretty soon. That's going to be fun. The week after that, I'll also be back in Phoenix again. There's another show, Del Sol Boxing. Huge crop of local AZ talent on both shows. And to be honest, there's so much young talent in Arizona right now. A lot of undefeated guys too. Different weight classes. It's not like it's the welterweight division where they're all undefeated. There's a huge crop of guys. Denny Barrios, a big standout. So if you guys are getting in the Arizona area, July 1st, make sure you go out to Glendale. Support that show as well. And then, of course, a month later, we're going to have Oscar Valdez and Emmanuel Navarrete. I'm pretty sure on that undercard, we're probably going to see some of the top-level Arizona prospects on the undercard. Maybe the non-televised portion leading up to the bigger televised portions of those fights. But just my schedule alone here in Arizona, back to back to back. And, that's just the beginning. There's going to be a whole lot more. There's another local promotion that they just had a show last week I wasn't even aware of, but Arizona has a lot of cards going on right now, and so it's going to be fun, man. There's going to be a few of these shows that I'm going to have to miss on TV. I'm going to have to watch the replay because I'll be out supporting these guys and getting some footage and documenting everything for you guys, basically. Sacrificing my entertainment as a fan to provide you guys with content. So make sure you tune in when we finally drop those heaters on you.
Absolutely. So be on the lookout for all of our platforms. Dennis mentioned here too that we have, I think that's Shakram Jayasov. I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name. He's from Uzbekistan. I believe I saw him fight. Let me see if I can find it here on the Canelo Bivol card. Maybe I think maybe he will know in the comments, but he's fighting. I see it right here, Harold Calderon. So that's a 13-0 Uzbekistan against a 27-0 welterweight guy. So that is on the Regis Prograis undercard. Ramla Ali is also on that undercard. Ginny Funch, who was a big amateur. Aaron Aponte. So there's some pretty good talent on that matchroom undercard. So I think if you're a boxing fan and you want to tune in early for an undercard, I think that one should be pretty solid.
Oh, yeah. And I'm just going to throw out another random name. If you guys are coming to any of these Arizona shows, Joseph Rivas, he's coming up, man. He's got a very slick southpaw style, and he can bang in there. But if you like slick southpaw boxers, like he's your guy. And when you talk about activity, he fought on a card he fought on 2 cards out here just a week apart, maybe a month ago, and he's going to be fighting again next weekend. He's very active. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up on the Oscar Valdez undercard too. He's very active, very hungry. Check him out, Joseph King Rivas. Look him up on Instagram too. Support him as well. Very entertaining guy, and I'll try to get some work in with him too. But I'm excited about Arizona boxing in general right now too. And then what you mentioned, Jack, even in the New England area, I mean, we're between you and Dakota. We have relations with both fighters. I don't know how you guys are going to settle that score with your guys, because you guys, with Mike and him with Harry, I mean, you guys are both close with both fighters. So being that we have that kind of fight, I mean, maybe we get a 24/7 type documentary on this fight. Who knows? But it's pretty awesome that we have these connections and relationships, close relationships with fighters to the point where they're fighting each other now too. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is crazy too, because I had been wanting to text Dakota because I knew that Mike was staying at 140. I knew there were talks about him getting another big regional name, another guy who's fought on big shows. And I was gonna say to Dakota, like, hey, like Harry and him would be a pretty cool fight. They're both at 140. They both fought Tiger Johnson, for example, 2 on ESPN. Harry's fought on DAZN against Aaron Aponte also. Thought it would be a pretty cool matchup, and here we are. They are meeting. So you talk about ways to settle it. There's only one way to settle it, and I think that will be in the ring that night. But Harry's a great fighter too. I got all the confidence in the world, and I think Mike will be able to pull it off. But it'll be a great fight for sure, and it'll be a good show. It'll be actually at a football stadium in Quincy, Massachusetts, Veterans Stadium. So I think it'll be a pretty cool atmosphere for a local fight also. So I can't wait.
Nice. And when is that one?
It is in August. I'll get the official date right now.
Okay.
Is it August 12th? It's a Friday night, which I like. Oh, August 11th. So August 11th, which is a Friday night in Quincy, Massachusetts, from Granite Chin Promotion. So that'll be pretty good.
Cool.
I know that Frank the Tank Hogan, who's a 14-0 with 13 knockouts, 154 middleweight prospect, will be on the card also. So I think it'll be a great night of local boxing with some ties that, once again, we always mention these club shows. The winner of these fights will be guys, even the loser of that main event fight will be guys that you will see on TV going forward. So it's definitely guys you want to pay attention to, without a doubt.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just spent the last 5 minutes talking about up and coming fighters too. So I mean, it's great. Boxing is in a great space, and one thing we mentioned, it brings in a lot of fans and viewership, but it also makes people excited to want to get into the sport too. When basketball is hot, everybody wants to play basketball. Same with like golf. Whatever the hot trending sport is at the time, these young kids look up to that and they want to get into that sport. So it's only going to benefit everybody. We're going to get young kids who might not. I think that's one thing we've talked about, is like the lacking of talent of American heavyweights for such a long time. Is they're playing football, they're playing basketball, they're not boxing anymore. And we're going to see more crops of American heavyweights, or just American fighters in general, getting into the sport because of how popular it's getting again.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. So great show overall. We started with an upcoming guy. We're talking about upcoming guys to win the show. We talked about world title fights in between. So any last things you want to bring up or anything? I think we basically covered everything. There's no more comments in the chat. So, but first of all, to the chat, we want to thank you guys for tuning in. As always, the comments that you guys have for us help the show flow a lot. So we appreciate you guys. We hope you guys tune in next week to his show on Monday and my show again on Friday.
There we go. Peace, y'all.
All right. Peace out, everybody. Thank you for tuning in as always. And we'll catch you guys.